The Valdez Bridge changed my brother. I know exactly when it happened because I was there, standing on the eastern bank, watching him cross alone at 7:30 in the evening. He went over smiling, hands in his pockets, whistling some tune I couldn't quite place. When he came back 20 minutes later, he walked differently. Heavier, like something invisible pressed down on his shoulders. "Stefan," I called out. "You all right?" He looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize. Same green color, same shape, but emptier somehow. "Fine," he said. Just that one word. Then he walked past me toward home. That was 3 years ago. Stefan still lives in our house, still goes to work at the mill, still eats dinner with our family every night. But he's not my brother anymore. Not really. He laughs at different jokes. Forgets memories we shared. Sometimes I catch him staring at his own hands like they belong to someone else. The thing is, he's not the only one. Mrs. Kovac from the bakery crossed the bridge last summer and came back speaking Russian for 2 days straight. She doesn't know Russian. Never studied it, never traveled there. But for 48 hours, that's all that came out of her mouth. Then it stopped, and she went back to normal. Mostly, everyone in town knows something's wrong with that bridge, but nobody talks about it. Not directly. The Valdez Bridge has been part of Riverside since 1879. It's a stone arch bridge, beautiful in an old-world way, spanning the Cerna River where it narrows between two steep banks. The town records say a man named Dmitri Valdez designed it, but there's barely any information about him. Just a name and a date. I started researching the bridge after what happened to Stefan. Couldn't help myself. My name's Lena, and I've always been the type who needs to understand things. My mother says it's a flaw. This need to dig into mysteries better left alone. Maybe she's right. The town library had old newspapers on microfiche. I spent weeks going through them, looking for mentions of the bridge. What I found wasn't much, but it was enough to make my hand shake that in 1937, a woman named Ingrid Holst crossed the bridge and never spoke again. Just stopped talking entirely. In 1962, 3 teenagers went over together on a dare. They came back speaking in perfect unison, saying the exact same words at the exact same time for 6 months. The articles called it a psychological phenomenon, but the strangest entry was from 1988. A journalist named Marcus Webb wrote a single article titled "The Bridge Remembers" before disappearing completely. The article was pulled from publication. I only found reference to it in an index that I needed to find that article. Anton Petrov had been the town librarian for 37 years. If anyone knew about Marcus Webb's missing article, it would be him. I found him in the archive room at 1:20 in the afternoon, sorting through boxes of old documents. "Mr. Petrov," I approached carefully. "I'm looking for information about an article from 1988. He looked up, his weathered face creasing into a frown. "Which one?" "The Bridge Remembers by Marcus Webb." His hands stopped moving. For a long moment, he just stared at me, and I saw something in his expression. Fear, maybe, or recognition. "You shouldn't be looking into that," he said quietly. "My brother crossed the bridge. He's different now. I need to understand why." Anton set down the box he'd been holding and walked to a locked cabinet in the corner. He pulled out a key ring, selected one, and opened it. Inside were files, dozens of them, all labeled with dates and names. "These are the ones they wanted destroyed," he said. "I kept copies. Figured someone would need them eventually." He pulled out a yellowed folder and handed it to me. "This is what Marcus found. Read it if you want, but understand something first. Everyone who seriously investigated that bridge has either left town or crossed it themselves. Marcus crossed it 3 days after writing this. He came back changed, just like your brother. Then he vanished." I took the folder with trembling hands. I read Marcus Webb's article that night in my apartment. Doors locked, curtains drawn. The paper was brittle, the typewritten words faded, but legible. What he discovered made my stomach turn. Marcus had interviewed 17 people who'd crossed the bridge and experienced changes. He documented their stories meticulously. A man who suddenly played piano like a virtuoso despite never having lessons. A woman who woke up fluent in languages she'd never studied. A child who aged 20 years in appearance overnight, then gradually returned to normal over 6 months. But the part that made me stop breathing was near the end. "The bridge doesn't change people," Marcus wrote. It swaps them. Every person who crosses leaves something behind and takes something with them. Memories, skills, personality traits, entire identities. The bridge is a conduit, but for what I cannot yet determine. I believe there is a place on the other side, not physically, but dimensionally, where these pieces collect. Where they wait. He'd included sketches, strange symbols he found carved into the bridge's underside, hidden beneath decades of moss and grime. Symbols that looked ancient, predating the bridge's construction by centuries. The final line of the article chilled me. Tomorrow I cross the bridge myself. I need to see what's on the other side. If I don't return the same, know that I tried to warn you all. I looked up from the paper. Stefan stood in my doorway. I hadn't heard him come in. You shouldn't read about the bridge, Lena, he said in that flat, empty voice. How did you get in here? I've always had a key. He stepped into the room. You need to stop asking questions. But he never had a key to my apartment. I'd never given him one. I didn't sleep that night. Stefan left after standing in my doorway for what felt like hours, just staring at me with those hollow eyes. After he was gone, I checked every lock twice, pushed my dresser against the door, and sat up with Marcus Webb's article clutched in my hands. The next morning, I went to see Mrs. Kovac at the bakery. She was arranging fresh bread in the display case when I walked in at 7:45. The shop smelled like yeast and cinnamon, warm and familiar. Lena, she greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The usual. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. About the bridge. Her smile vanished. She glanced at the other customers, then gestured toward the back room. Come with me. We stood among flour sacks and industrial mixers while she twisted her apron in her hands. You crossed it last summer, I said. You spoke Russian for 2 days. Do you remember what happened on the bridge? I remember everything, she whispered. That's the worst part. When you cross, there's a moment, maybe 5 seconds, maybe less, when you're nowhere. Not on the bridge, not in the world. You're in this space. And there are others there, Lena. So many others. They reach for you, and you reach for them. And when you come out on the other side, you're carrying pieces of them, and they're carrying pieces of you. Who are they? She shook her head. I don't know. But I think they've been there a long time. Trapped, maybe. Or waiting. I found Dimitri Valdez's grave in the old cemetery on the hill overlooking the river. It took me 3 hours of searching through overgrown plots before I located it, hidden beneath a willow tree. The headstone was simple. Dimitri Valdez, 1842 to 1879, builder of bridges between worlds. Between worlds. Not between banks. Between worlds. I was kneeling there, tracing the letters with my fingers, when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see a woman I didn't recognize, middle-aged, wearing clothes that looked oddly dated, like something from the 1950s. You're Lena, she said. Not a question. How do you know my name? Because I've been watching you. Watching everyone who gets close to the truth. She moved closer, and I noticed her eyes were the same empty quality as Stefan's. My name is Petra. I crossed the bridge in 1973. I've been trying to warn people ever since, but nobody listens. Nobody wants to believe. Warn them about what? The bridge was never meant to be crossed. Valdez built it as a seal, not a passage. There's something underneath this town, Lena. Something old and hungry. The bridge keeps it contained, but every time someone crosses, the seal weakens. Every person who walks over it feeds the thing below. And eventually, she trailed off, staring past me toward the river, where the bridge arched gracefully in the distance. Eventually what? Eventually, it breaks free. That night, I broke into the town hall. I'd never done anything illegal before, but I was past caring about rules. The truth about the bridge was buried in bureaucracy and old files, and I was going to dig it out. The archives were in the basement, locked behind a door marked Authorized Personnel Only. I picked the lock with a hairpin and a credit card, thank you YouTube tutorials, and slipped inside at 11:30. The files were organized by decade. I found the 1870s and started pulling folders. Birth certificates, death records, property deeds. Then I found it, the original town council meeting minutes from October 1879, 2 weeks before Valdez finished the bridge. The handwriting was difficult to read, cramped and faded, but the words were clear enough. Councilman Greger objects to the bridge construction, states that Valdez is dabbling in practices beyond Christian understanding. Valdez responds that the bridge is necessary to contain the anomaly beneath the river. Vote proceeds. Bridge construction approved 7-4. I kept reading. 3 days after the bridge opened, Dimitri Valdez walked across it and never came back. His body was found in the river a week later. The official cause of death was drowning, but the coroner's notes, scribbled in the margin and later crossed out, mentioned no water in lungs and expression of absolute terror. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. A letter tucked into the file, written in Valdez's own hand the day before he died. I have made a terrible mistake. The bridge does not contain the anomaly. It feeds it. Every crossing strengthens the connection between our world and the space between. I will cross tomorrow to seal the bridge from within. If I fail, someone must destroy it before it's too late. The basement door opened behind me. I spun around to see Stefan standing there, but he wasn't alone. Behind him stood Mrs. Kovac, Petra, and at least a dozen other townspeople I recognized. All of them had crossed the bridge. All of them had those same empty eyes. "We can't let you destroy the bridge, Lena," Stefan said in a voice that sounded like many voices speaking together. "Not when we're so close to being free." They circled me slowly, blocking every exit. I clutched Valdez's letter, backing against the filing cabinets. Free from what? I demanded. Petra stepped forward. Her expression had changed. No longer afraid, no longer human. "We're not the ones who got trapped, Lena. We're the ones who were already there, waiting in that space between. When people cross the bridge, we slip into their bodies, their memories, their lives. That's impossible, is it?" Stefan tilted his head in a way my brother never did. "Your brother is still here. He's just sharing his body now with something that's been waiting a very long time to experience the world again. We all are. Hundreds of us, maybe thousands, all squeezed into the minds of those who cross." Mrs. Kovac spoke, but her voice had that same unified quality. "Valdez didn't seal anything. He opened a door, and we've been using it ever since, one person at a time. But we're tired of sharing, tired of being fragments. We want to come through completely. The more people who cross," another voice continued from someone I didn't recognize, "the wider the door opens. We've been encouraging crossings for over a century. Subtle suggestions. There's accidents. Soon enough, everyone in town will have crossed, and then the door stays open," Stefan finished. "Then we don't need host bodies anymore. Then we can be whole again." I understood now. The changed behaviors, the missing memories, the strange abilities. They weren't side effects. They were the point. The bridge wasn't swapping traits between people. It was allowing something else to slip through, wearing human skin like a costume. And they've been planning this for generations. I ran. No planning, no strategy, just pure terror driving me toward the stairs. They didn't chase me immediately, and that was somehow worse. They just stood there, watching with those hollow eyes, letting me flee, because they knew something I didn't yet. There was nowhere to run in a town where half the population had already crossed the bridge. I burst out of the town hall at midnight exactly, the clock tower chiming above me. The streets were empty, but I felt watched from every window. How many of them were already converted? How many were still waiting their turn? I ran to my car, fumbled with the keys, and started driving. Away from the bridge, away from town, toward the highway that would take me anywhere else. The road stretched ahead, dark and empty. Freedom was 15 minutes away. Then I saw it. The detour sign. The road closure. Construction forcing all traffic onto an alternate route that looped back through the center of town. Back toward the bridge. I slammed on the brakes, my car skidding to a stop. The construction signs looked old, weathered. Like they'd been there for years, not recently placed. I got out and walked closer, pulling out my phone for light. The signs were bolted into concrete foundations. Permanent installations. Someone had planned this detour long ago, ensuring that anyone trying to leave town would have to cross the bridge first. Did you really think we hadn't thought of everything? I whirled around. Petra stood behind me, along with 5 others. They must have followed me, though I'd seen no other cars. Every road out of town eventually leads back to the bridge, she said. We've had 140 years to prepare. You can't leave, Lena. None of you can. Everyone crosses eventually. I abandoned the car and ran into the forest bordering the road. Branches tore at my clothes and face as I crashed through the undergrowth, heading away from the river, away from the bridge. If I could get far enough, maybe I could circle around to the next town on foot. But the forest was darker than it should have been. My phone's flashlight barely penetrated the shadows, and the trees seemed to twist and bend in ways that didn't make sense. I'd hiked these woods 100 times as a kid. They'd never felt like this, malevolent, watching, alive. After what felt like hours of running, I stumbled into a clearing, and there, impossibly, was the bridge. The same stone arches, the same worn path, but I'd been running directly away from the river. This couldn't be the same bridge. Except when I looked closer, I saw it wasn't crossing water. It arched over nothing, spanning a gap filled with darkness, so complete my flashlight couldn't penetrate it. And in that darkness, things moved. Shapes that were almost human but not quite, reaching upward toward the bridge's underside. There are more bridges than you know, a voice said from behind me. I turned to see Anton Petrov, the librarian, emerging from the trees. His eyes were still his own, still human. Mr. Petrov, what's happening? Valdez didn't just build one bridge. He built 7, all around this valley, all in different locations. Some cross water, some cross air, some cross dimensions we can't see. They form a network, Lena. A cage, but also a gateway. You haven't crossed, I observed. No, I've been resisting for 30 years. Watching, documenting, waiting for someone else who could see the truth. He pulled out an old journal from his coat. Valdez left instructions. How to seal the bridges permanently. But it requires someone to cross willingly, knowing what they're doing, and perform a ritual on the other side. That's suicide. Yes. His expression was grim. Valdez tried it. He failed because he went alone. The ritual needs 2 people, one to hold the door from this side, one to close it from within. He had no one he could trust. We sat in the clearing while Anton explained. The journal was filled with diagrams, symbols, and instructions written in 3 different languages. Valdez had spent years researching the anomaly beneath Riverside before building his bridges. The things in the space between, Anton said, they're old. Older than this country, older than recorded history. They existed before our world solidified into what it is now. They're remnants of possibilities that never fully formed. And they want out. Why Riverside? The valley sits on a thin point. A place where reality is more negotiable. Valdez discovered this and tried to reinforce the barrier by building the bridges. But he made a mistake. He used his own blood in the mortar, created a connection. That's what allowed them to start slipping through. I thought about Stefan, about all the people I'd known who'd changed. How many are through already? Maybe 40% of the town's population. They've been patient, strategic, taking important people first. Council members, police, business owners. Building influence. In another few years, they'll have enough control to force everyone across. He met my ass. Unless we stop them tonight. You said 2 people are needed for the ritual. Yes. One must stand at the center of the original bridge, the one over the river. The other must cross into the space between and speak the words of sealing. The bridge will collapse, severing all 7 connections permanently. But the person in the space between won't make it back. I finished. My hands were shaking. And you want me to be that person? I'm 73 years old, Lena. I can't run. I can barely climb the stairs to my own apartment anymore. But I can stand on a bridge and read words from a book. He gripped my shoulder. You're young. You have a chance at fighting through them to reach the bridge. I don't. We made our way back to town through the forest, Anton moving slowly but steadily. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky a sickly orange. We had to reach the bridge before full daylight, before the town woke up and realized what we were planning. But they were waiting. Of course they were. Stefan stood at the eastern approach to the bridge, along with what looked like half the town. Their faces were blank, unified. A collective consciousness wearing human masks. You can't destroy what has already become part of us, they said in perfect unison. "We are in the walls of your houses, the water you drink, the air you breathe. We are Riverside now." Anton stepped forward, clutching the journal. "You're parasites. You've stolen these people's lives. We've given them purpose, unity, freedom from the burden of individual existence." The crowd moved closer, speaking as one. "Join us, Lena. Let us in willingly, and we'll let Anton go. He can leave town, live out his remaining years in peace. All you have to do is cross the bridge." I looked at the stone arches, at the dark water flowing beneath. The symbols Valdez had carved were visible now in the early light, glowing faintly with a greenish luminescence. "If I cross," I said slowly, "what happens to me? To the real me? You become we. Your memories remain, but you'll share them with something greater. You'll finally understand what it means to be truly connected." Anton grabbed my arm. "Don't listen. It's not connection. It's consumption. There's nothing left of the people who cross. Just empty shells piloted by something that doesn't understand what it means to be human." I pulled away from both of them and walked toward the bridge alone. The crowd parted to let me through. Stefan, or the thing wearing Stefan's face, smiled. A wise choice, but I didn't step onto the bridge. Instead, I climbed over the railing and dropped down to the bank below. The underside of the bridge was covered in symbols, just like Marcus Webb had documented. They pulsed with that same greenish light, forming patterns that hurt to look at directly. The water rushed past my feet, cold and dark. Anton appeared above me on the bridge, the journal open in his hands. "Are you sure about this?" "No," I called back. "But I'm doing it anyway." The crowd gathered on the bridge, their unified voice rising in protest. But they couldn't stop what was about to happen. The ritual required consent, and I was giving it freely. I pressed my hand against the nearest symbol. It burned like ice. The world lurched. Suddenly, I was standing in that space between the nowhere Marcus had described. Gray emptiness stretched in all directions, broken only by fragments of reality floating like islands. Buildings, trees, pieces of sky, all disconnected and drifting. And the figures. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands, all reaching toward me with desperate, grasping hands. They had no real form, just suggestions of humanity stretched and distorted. "Help us," they whispered in a million overlapping voices. "Let us in. Let us live again." "You were never alive," I said, understanding finally. "You're the things that could have been but never were. The might-have-beens. They almost happened. You're jealous of existence." Their rage was palpable. The space shook, fracturing further. Above, or was it beside? Directions didn't work properly here. I could hear Anton's voice reading from the journal. The words were in a language I'd never heard, but I felt their power resonating through the emptiness. The figures screamed. They surged toward me, trying to break through, to force their way into my body the way they'd done to Stefan and all the others. But I held firm, speaking the words Anton had taught me, the sealing words Valdez had discovered too late. The space between began to collapse. The fragments of reality pulled back, snapping into their proper places like magnets finding metal. The figures clawed at me, but they were losing cohesion, unraveling back into the potentiality they'd always been. I felt them trying to grab hold of my consciousness, my memories, anything solid they could use as an anchor. I felt Stefan in there somewhere too, not the thing that had taken him, but a trace of my real brother trapped and screaming for 3 years. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry I couldn't save you." The bridge above me groaned. Through the collapsing space, I could see Anton still standing there, still reading, even as the townspeople, the possessed ones, closed in around him. He met my eyes for just a moment. "Thank you," he mouthed. Then the bridge shattered. Stone exploded outward in all directions as the 7 bridges collapsed simultaneously. The network Valdez had built, meant to contain but corrupted to gateway, tore itself apart. I felt the barriers slamming shut, sealing the might-have-beens back into their non-existence. The figures' screams faded to nothing. The space dissolved. I fell into darkness, so complete I couldn't tell if I was falling up or down or sideways. I felt pieces of myself scattering, memories fragmenting. My childhood. My parents. Stefan teaching me to ride a bike. All of it coming apart like puzzle pieces thrown into a hurricane. Then, suddenly, silence. and cold water closing over my head. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. The doctors said I'd been found in the river, half drowned, suffering from severe hypothermia and a head injury. They asked me what I remembered. I told them I'd been hiking and fallen. They seemed to believe it. Anton Petrov was buried the same week. Heart attack, they said. He'd been found on what remained of the Valdez Bridge, the journal clutched in his dead hands. The town council decided not to rebuild. Too expensive, they said. Too dangerous. The people who'd crossed the bridge started recovering gradually. Stefan came home a month after the collapse, confused and disoriented, missing 3 years of memories but otherwise himself. Mrs. Kovacs stopped speaking Russian. The others slowly, painfully, returned to who they'd been before. Most of them. Some were too far gone. Some had been possessed so long there wasn't enough of the original person left to come back. They exist now in a kind of half-state, not quite the might-have-beens, but not quite human either. I left Riverside 6 months ago. Got a job in the city, started over. But sometimes late at night, I feel them still. The things in the space between. They're sealed away, trapped again in their non-existence. But they remember me. They remember the girl who closed the door on them. And I remember them too. The shapes in the darkness. The desperate, grasping hands. The hunger that never dies because it was never truly alive. I still cross bridges when I have to. But I count my steps carefully. And I never, ever look down at the water below. Because sometimes, just for a moment, I see them there in the reflection. Still reaching. Still waiting. Still hungry.